Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're really excited to have you on this live event on LinkedIn. I'm Aaron Rodriguez. I'm going to be the moderator today for this panel titled How to Get a Job at Electronic Arts, Epic Games, and Riot Games. So we're super excited. I've been pumped for it all week. And we have an awesome panel for you to ask questions with, interact with, and get some insight from. All about how to build your personal brand, what do recruiters look for, anything in terms of your career development. You can ask the questions here and we'll get it all answered. So to introduce our panelist, our first panelist is Stephanie Ha, who's a next-gen talent recruiter at Electronic Arts. Next, we have Kaye Vassey, who's a lead technical animator at Epic Games. And we also have Brenna Webb, who's the global marketing communications at esports at Riot Games. So welcome, everybody. And make sure to give your virtual round of applause. We're super proud and excited to have them here. So to get this started off, the first question, and this is for everybody, and we can kind of go around in the order I just listed, but what makes an applicant stand out? So Stephanie, would you like to go first?
Yeah, really quickly, I guess I'll introduce myself. I'm Stephanie Ha, one of the senior recruiters at Electronic Arts. I support the engineering, UX design, and product teams across North America, sometimes globally. And to reiterate your question, what makes a candidate stand out? I think there's really not like, I could talk for days about just the things that could help you stand out. But I think the number one thing is being prepared to showcase yourself in a digital world. So, very much like the world we're living in now, unfortunately, still kind of tackling the pandemic and all that. It's a good time to get prepared with sharing your portfolio, sharing your resume in a digital format. So my number one tip would be having a resume that is prepared in PDF. And I think PDF is best when submitting, your application or sharing it out on the media, LinkedIn, or anything like that. It's easy to drop. And, with Word documents, sometimes it's a little tricky. There could be versions with notes. It could be comments on it, and you don't really want that being sent out. So sometimes PDF kind of forces you to have the most pristine copy. And so I think that's one way to stand out, is just to have a ready to go resume.
Awesome. And Kaye, would you like to introduce yourself as well and give an answer to that question?
Absolutely. So, hi, everybody. My name is Kaye Vassey. As Aaron said, I'm a lead technical animator at Epic Games. And so the question is sort of, what would make you stand out as a candidate? My job is on the art side of things, content creation and running teams, specifically for technical animation. And so for us, it's really going to be about the quality of the artwork. And the portfolio. I think what Stephanie said was right on the money too. Your sort of information needs to be easy to get to, easy to read, as well as if you're going to show us a portfolio, if we have to go 3 or 4 links deep on your site, then it gets kind of, not the best user experience. If we can go and see everything right there, click, watch movies, see your demo, things like that, we get a really quick and concise sort of view of your work. And then we'll probably send you a test if we think that the work is up to what we're looking for whatever role we need to fill. Yeah, that's basically it. Also, a 1,500 word cover letter. No, that is not needed at all these days. So keep your portfolio concise, to the point, focused, and communicate, as best you can. And that's what we look for.
Awesome. Yeah, and I love that tip you just gave about, your first impression, you only have a few seconds. You don't want to hide, your talent behind a bunch of links or clicks. I love that. And Brenna, would you like to introduce yourself and conquer that question too?
Sure. Yes, Brenna Webb, and I am with Riot's. I work on marketing communication for Riot's global esports division. And I'm fairly new to Riot. I came in December of last year. So during the pandemic, I decided to make a job change. My career has primarily been in traditional sports. Previously, I came to Riot from the NFL. And with my job right now, a lot of what I do is definitely more on the corporate communications and public relations side. And so when it comes to candidates and interns and coordinators that I've had working on comms, for me, it's really important that you pay attention and you're eager to learn and follow the news and the media. It always varies depending on what area you focus in. When I worked in sports television, it was really important to make sure that you're following how viewership is going in a certain event, and any sort of changes that you may see in technical production on a football game or NBA game. And so that was something that was very important for you to keep up and know what the trends were and who was writing the great stories that you might want to engage with a reporter or pitch a story to. And similarly with esports, it's very important in that way too. For me, I am primarily focused on more of the corporate comms side. So when it comes to reporters who cover the industry, and then I have team members that do focus and they follow reporters that really are on the game beat. So on the League of Legends beat or on the Valorant beat. But it is really important to engage with media, read their stories, see what they're interested in, see maybe what they're not covering, so that you don't want to be in a position where you're pitching a story that a writer wrote about like a week ago. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention and that you're showing interest in the industry that you're focused in.
Awesome. I really love each one of y'all's answers, because now we get a good sense of exactly your industry. They're pretty similar, but they all have their niches, which is awesome. So I'm really excited to see how this conversation progresses for sure. So I guess one of the first questions I have for Stephanie is, so what do you look for when you're going through these applications for the intern program? I'm sure a lot of our audience are students like myself, and we're always looking for opportunities to be an intern. So what do you look for as a recruiter when going through those applications?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I think there is some good resume etiquette. So I'll start there, and I'll try to keep it pretty succinct. But the number one thing is, I certainly want to make sure that you're eligible for an internship program. Now, again, all companies have different eligibility timeframes for graduation dates, but specifically for electronic arts, we are wanting to know your anticipated grad date. And so adding that month and that year can really help us narrow down, are you even eligible for this opportunity for the internship program? It's typically that you have at least one more semester left in your, schooling to be eligible. So let's say if you were applying for a summer internship program, and you are, graduating in May of 2023, you would have essentially one more year left to do an internship before you graduate. So we kind of look at that. And then, of course, you would be considered a junior, rising to become a senior. And then any level below that, you're eligible based on, the grad year. Another thing that I think is wonderful to include, is tailoring your resume to specifically what the job is looking for. And again, if you have never applied for an internship, obviously it's just great to add some of the different tools that you've leveraged. And typically you'd want to assume that the recruiter that's looking at your profile, the tools that you know the most or languages that you know the most should start in the beginning. And then, based on kind of proficiency level, you can add, in the list style. But it's always good to have your top 3 languages or your top 3 tools that you're eligible or able to use more proficiently. So that way we can get a really quick glimpse of, hey, this person really knows how to utilize Java or, whatever that might be. And then lastly, I can't iterate this enough. I think spell check. Sometimes you just don't realize that punctuation or even names. And that just goes to show just the quality of, your meticulousness and, having organization. Spell check is going to set you apart. Because I see resumes all the time where there are portfolios that have dead links. So just make sure things are working, especially in the digital world when we talked about having @ready. And so those are some of the things. And I see some questions coming in. The first one from Sarah. Could you tell us a little bit about how internships go? Yes. So within EA, and I'll keep this short and pass it along to anyone else in the panel. It is a 12-week program for us. So for example, in the summer, it would be, May start date, and then you would end sometime around, second week of August for 12 weeks. And you are typically, put together with a mentor over the summer, along with another manager. And so you really have that mentor to help guide you and is there for you day to day to ask questions. So yeah, there's going to be a more isolated project for you because typically Electronic Arts aims to hire 1 intern per team. So you're not in a sense competing on projects or working on the same project. We really try to be mindful of having you work on something that is a business need. And I think that wraps up my response, but feel free to tag along.
Awesome. Yeah, I really like that because I think it's so daunting when you hear the word internship as a student because, it's your first venture into, your professional career or the industry you want to go in. And that actually kind of leads me to my next question for Kaye, which is, since you're also involved in the hiring process, what tips do you give to someone who's never done a professional digital portfolio before on top of the resume? So let's kind of combine that.
I think the best portfolios come through with the best work up front. And, just to speak to internships a little bit, I do want to say that one of the things that I look at, and what Stephanie said is 100% true. Please spell check, have your resume be concise. Tell us what you're involved with. We get so many applications at Epic that by the time I get the resume, it's sort of already been vetted. And I work really closely with the people in college outreach and recruiting to sort of give them what I'm looking for and tell them about all the apps and tools and things that I'm really going to want experience with. And then I usually get on a phone call or a Zoom meeting with that person, and I can tell immediately based on their interview skills, whether they're going to work and sort of what their personality is and how hungry they are. Just personally, I will take a candidate who is lacking experience and could possibly have their art pushed a little harder if they're hungry. And by hungry, I mean they really want in this industry. They want to be an artist, whether it's film or animation or games, and they're willing to put in the time. For me personally, that's somebody that I can train. And I as someone who looks at a lot of interns and works with a lot of interns, that's something that I appreciate over, for example, we use, different software. And if you know where to click to do a thing in that software, that's awesome. But for me, that's not going to get you the internship. And so I definitely want to sort of make that clear that it is personality and that fire that you're going to bring to that phone call when we get on it. As far as portfolio structure, I had sort of mentioned before that I really liked the idea that things were concise, easy to get to so that I could see. I also like to be able to scrub. So if we start talking about video formats and editing, I love to be able to pause it and scrub and get details and look at things, especially for technical animation when it comes to physics, simulation, hair, clothing. I like to see sort of the before and after, or the work in progress, and then the final render or final gameplay. I love being able to get into those details so that when we get into that interview process, I can actually screen share and ask you questions and say, so right here, what did you think? Like, how did this work for you? Tell me about this particular problem that you solved right here on screen. And that speaks volumes when it comes to interviewing. And so best work first. The other thing I would say is when you're going to go into a creative industry like film, animation, games, you have to make a hard choice about what you want to focus on. And so when we are hiring for a role, we want to see portfolios. There can be diversity in there, but we really want to see strong work in the focus of what we're hiring for. So if you sort of present yourself as a great generalist, it sort of means that you're going to be pretty good at a lot of stuff. And that's not necessarily going to get you into a professional level really quickly. Most studios are going to want you to specialize. And so hopefully that answers the question pretty well.
Yes, for sure. Because as a creative, I definitely dip my toes in various, creative endeavors, whether it's videography or graphic design. But, you're spread so thin that you don't really conquer one. So I think that's awesome advice, especially from a creative aspect. But next, Brenna, I would love to ask you about how that transition went for you from the NFL to Riot Games. Congratulations, that's awesome. And I think it's a good, segue in terms of making that transition. I know as a college student, I've had interns in totally different industries. And sometimes, it's daunting to be able to make that transition. How did that transition go for you in terms of, the job application process?
Yeah, it was definitely different. I think that I've had transitions throughout my career now, and I've held several different jobs. They all tend to revolve around sports and media, and then PR, and then the PR element of that. But with transitioning from a traditional sport like the NFL to a more emerging global sport like esports is definitely different, because the community is different and the audience is different in terms of the demographic. My last year at the NFL, we were just coming off celebrating 100 years of the NFL being around, and coming into Riot, they had just completed their 10-year anniversary of League of Legends esports and the game. And so you can, just by that alone, you can see that there's a lot of difference in what you can learn over, a 10-year period, but also, 100 years, you can be a different business, and when worlds change around you. So I think that, when it comes to, if you're looking to diversify, particularly in PR, because I can really only speak to PR and communications, I think it is valuable, in my industry, for to get, I encourage students to, if you have the opportunity to work at an agency, I think that you should take that opportunity, because in an agency, it gives you, in one space, the opportunity to work on a lot of different accounts, from sports to healthcare to food and beverage, and to government relations. So I think in one stop, you can get a lot of different looks at a job. And then when you decide, if you decide to go in-house with your career later, I think it gives you a great advantage in terms of having that ability to work for a client, large or small. And you also have to meet deadlines, and it really challenges you to immerse yourself in that specific assignment that you're on in a specific subject matter. So for PR and comms individuals, I think that is a great area to start your career, and it really opens up a lot of doors for where you may want to go, and it gives you a little bit more flexibility to decide which direction your interest lies.
Awesome. Yes, for sure. And I think, although a lot of college students, especially some of my friends in the communications field, although it's not career changing, it's major changing, so some of the experiences they have is, in a totally different field, but being able to find those similarities, like you mentioned with, at the NFL and Riot Games and those anniversaries, that's an awesome connection. I think, that's pretty universal in terms of the experience and, the emotions that it brings out of people that are fans of those respective, companies. So Steph, I was told about, your interview secret. And since we're on the whole process of, discovering about recruiting, what is that secret?
Yeah, I think, everyone has their own secret sauce, but for me, my biggest advice and tip to someone who, gets really nervous and, always seems to feel that imposter syndrome before going into conversations, is, just better understanding, what really is being asked of you in an interview. It can always feel a little bit like they're just drilling me with questions and I don't really know how to prepare. But I think merely just understanding that they are seeking to understand how you think, how do you approach a problem, and how do you essentially, deal with roadblocks and how do you, overcome them. So I know probably the STAR method of responses has been tossed around. It's pretty traditional for recruiters, maybe someone you came across that is giving you interview tips. But for me, I think, the STAR method can be broken down differently. And, the STAR method is situation, task, action, and result. But to me, I think of it as like, of course, the situation is really something that you are aware of, and the party that you're sharing this information won't really know, right? It's kind of like sharing a story with a friend. You kind of had to be there. So you got to lay the land for them, let them know, like, what was up? Like, why did you work on this said project, or why were you approached with this problem? And so that's really just what it is. Oh, this is what happened. And then secondly, you'll dive into, what did you own? Like, what was the task that you were, asked to focus on? It's always nice to hear about like what your team did or what you have done collectively. But again, they're trying to measure what you focused on and the things and skill sets you can offer. So being able to speak upon like the ownership you had in this larger project or situation. And then lastly, the action, the things you did to help the cause, the why behind this, project or situation. And then lastly, the R, I kind of consider that like result as more of like your own retrospect, right? Like it's oftentimes you don't think about sharing like the negative things, right? The roadblocks that came across, but that's truly the story. It helps the interviewer understand like, oh, this is how, Stephanie thinks about problems. Like this is how she deals with situations that are more challenging. And, showcasing that genuinely and sharing that retrospective really helps them understand like, oh, this is a good reflection. And, how did you overcome that? And I think that just shows, it's that like maturity where what you did wrong, but then at the same time, it could have been really successful, but the situation may have been gone a little sour, and you want to just be able to express that in the best way possible. So that's kind of my secret sauce is, when you are picking apart, something you're most proud of, but also when you're asked, tell me about a time something was challenging, don't feel afraid to answer those things, because I think that's what makes us human. And I think that it alleviates that imposter syndrome because we all know that we make mistakes. And so that's kind of my, little bit of secret sauce. It's helped me through my career. And then I know that, a lot of students that I've supported said that it's helped them. And so hopefully that will, give you a little boost in confidence of how to talk about more of the negative things and shed some positivity to that experience.
That's really cool. Kaye, would you like to speak to that as well? Any interview secrets?
Yeah, I mean, Stephanie was sort of all over it, but I think it's important to, talk about your failures and sort of what you did around them. I mean, we always have specific sort of teams come in to do the interview, and one team handles this, the other team handles that. And there are specific questions like, what would you do if, and, yeah, but it all comes down to like, what was the most challenging thing you worked on? Why was it challenging? And what did you do to overcome it? Or maybe you didn't overcome it. And, you can usually tell in the interview, you can usually tell once somebody gets past the sort of nervousness. We get a lot of sort of starstruck people coming into Epic to interview. And once they get past the nervousness and they start talking about their work, and it gets to like that level of nerdy where they're an artist or a game dev, right? Like you get them talking shop when it's not about the interview. That's when you can really see what they did and why, and what their contribution was to the overall project and the work that they did versus, yeah, this was a group project and we did this in school and it was fun. And so once you can tell when they're sort of moving away from that. So yeah, spot on.
Awesome. And Brenna, would you like to add on to any of that?
Sure. Yeah. I could just, say that in my experience going through the interview process, the one thing that I tell people to keep in mind is that it's just as much about you making a decision that's best for you. Then you shouldn't just think about it as if you're trying to do whatever you can to impress this company or impress this person. You have a decision to make that for you as well, and you're just as much interviewing the company as they're interviewing you. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind. And when you have the opportunity to ask questions, definitely do that. And and also I can definitely relate to the idea of getting caught up and every probably always we say that word dream job. I think you also want to come at it very pragmatically, to think that no job is ever going to be perfect, and you're going to want to come at it and keep that in mind in terms of how you're judging it, to where you're not overlooking things that may not jive with your skill set or your style or your personality. So I think that, I think it's always important to keep you primary. You're the primary, and once you're confident in your skills, but you still have to make decisions that, are important to your life, to give you that great work-life balance that make you even better as a human to do the job.
Yes, for sure. And I love the point that you mentioned about, you're interviewing them too to see if it's a good fit. And I think a lot of people in the chat and watching this afterwards are going to agree that y'all work for really awesome companies that they would consider dream jobs. So I actually kind of want to delve into that a little more. So Stephanie, how is it at EA, and how is that process of working in that environment, and to, that whole company, especially like the talent pipeline, how is it there?
Yeah, I probably can't speak too much about like the talent pipeline, but we certainly have a variety of disciplines, which makes my job a lot of fun, because for the most part, if you reach out to me on LinkedIn and you're very specific about, what you're passionate about and the skills that you do possess, I really feel like there is a space for you within, electronic arts, just because there's so many facets to the current teams and new teams that, are looking to build new products and things of that nature. But in terms of like just speaking to environment, I would say, from my experience, it is a very inclusive culture. I love that, even though I, have a title and, I, recruit day to day, I always feel like I'm being encouraged to work with, engineering teams to build new things and, streamlining opportunities to make things better at the company as a whole. We have, and I'm sure a lot of other companies have values and purpose and beliefs. For us, pioneering is one of those things that, we continuously want to think about the next generation. When it comes to games, like sky's not just the limit, right? Like, what is your big sky idea and how do we, make that happen? And so, anytime I'm in conversation, which is really refreshing, is to hear that someone is specifically asking me, like, what are your thoughts? And, even though I'm not, like a senior or director or something like that, I just feel like my voice is heard. And I love that as being a creative, as being an electronic artist, it's why we call ourselves artists. There's really just no limit to what you can do and what you can build with your fellow colleagues. So that's kind of, a little bit of what electronic arts is about.
Awesome. And Kaye, Epic Games, they're well known, especially with my people my age who are gamers. How is Epic Games working for them?
Epic Games is amazing. I mean, it truly is epic. For the most part, it's best idea wins if it's possible to execute that idea. And of course, with Fortnite and the other products and the other things that Epic is doing with the engine and sort of democratization of software, it's just, it's a big open landscape now. And we just try to let everybody get in and play and show them how easy it is to make games and how much fun it is. And so, the company has grown so much over the years that I've been there. I'm going on 7.5 years. And so it's gotten so big and international, and it's wonderful to be in meetings with people all over the world trying to accomplish the same thing and solve the same problem. So it's really quite an experience. And I've definitely, I've definitely worked in film. I did a lot of work in feature animation and things like that for many, many years. And it's definitely a very similar sort of collaborative environment and a creative space. And obviously, as far as the facilities and everything, it's also really cool. Obviously, my office has been where I'm sitting right now for the past year. So we're going to be continuing that for the near future. But it's sad to not see everybody in person, but Zoom meetings and Slack are leading the way. So it's been great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people would love that opportunity. And, it's awesome to hear that Epic Games is an awesome workplace as well. And Brenna, I know that, esports is definitely an emerging industry. So how is it being involved in that industry?
Yeah, it's really been fun. It's been good to learn. I'm still doing a lot of learning in terms of, for what I do, it's really important to understand the audience and the makeup. This is I believe the second job in my career that has been with a global company. So to Kaye's point, it has been really fun being on, even though it would be great to see them in person, but having colleagues that work, around the world and having meetings with them and learning more about what their audience and what, the fandom looks like in their areas, and what are the trends that are important that shape our entire global strategy is really fun to learn about. I think that the one thing that, I am very much looking forward to, I've only been since I started to the office once, and we have a really great office space that's really fun. And we're in Los Angeles, and it's been a great opportunity. It's been great to be there, but I'm missing the feel of having people in the office, and I'm looking forward to that opportunity when we're finally able to kind of get back to normal. We're slowly bringing people in, and teams that really have to collaborate and work together, especially on the game side. But for us on PR and communications, we're certainly the group that, you know, are more on the tail end of getting back to the office, because we can work pretty much anywhere and working from home. But yeah, I am looking forward to really immersing into Riot and getting to really know the people. And it's such a large company that has, you know, that's very diverse and very player and game focused, which is also something that's fun to see in terms of how much the player means to our strategy, and is always our North Star.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I love watching some esports tournaments with some competitive games. It's just so crazy how hype it is, and the environment and the fan base is so cool. But yeah, so let's talk about how about, you know, whenever y'all see like resumes, what has been one resume or portfolio that's has a lasting effect on you, and it was just so nice. That way we can kind of get a feel of what sticks out to recruiters. Stephanie, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah. I mean, generally, I think it really depends on like what, you know, opportunity you're shooting for. But for me, I think just a portfolio that is clean and up to date and relevant. I don't know how often updates happen, but I think that's just the same theme across, is just having something that is used and is not outdated, anything like that. Making sure that the links are working and things of that nature, and how it's showcased. So definitely leveraging, you know, color schemes and just making sure that it's easy to look at for all parties, right? When we're trying to be inclusive. I have seen portfolios that, you know, may not use the best colors, even though it is flashy and fun. You know, for the most part, it's just not the best user experience. And so I think that those are some, you know, top of mind things to think about. Font, you know, when it comes to just user design, like that's the first thing that one of the interviewers are looking for if they got past, you know, after a recruiter review. And so I certainly want to be able to share portfolios or resumes that are clean. And then, you know, outside of that, I think just another thing I wanted to mention that, you know, can really make you stand out is, you know, being sure that when you do reach out to a candidate or a recruiter on LinkedIn, for example, just being really specific about, you know, something that you see on the website. You know, I know Brenna and you both touched on this, but it's just kind of like, make sure you know what's going on in the industry, and don't just, you know, have a general reach out. Like, be more, you know, stand out in that way where you're keeping up to date. You know, we want to know if you're passionate about our workplace and, you know, your interest in us. So I think those things just kind of trickle through and theme as like, just be present and understand what's going on.
Definitely. And it just occurred to me, and I think it's a totally another aspect of, you know, the interviewing processes. Do you ever see people utilize social media in terms of their, you know, resume and portfolio as well?
Yeah, I've seen some really unique ways for, you know, I mean, obviously we know TikTok's on the rise, and I've actually seen people create, you know, fun little clips just showcasing their resume. I think that's one way that's really fun. I don't know how many candidates I've seen that, you know, reach out to me with that, but I think it would be a standout. You know, it's one way to set yourself apart. And then, you know, I had a short discussion with someone that back in the days when we could get together at career fairs, you know, they had a QR code at ready. So maybe if you are someone who has a website and you have a chance to put like a QR code up, it's one way to quickly scan and see your resume. In person, you know, when you are meeting them, you know, obviously you want to save some trees and not have paper copies. So just having a digital format as well.
Yes, definitely, for sure. Kaye, would you like to speak to that as well? I know, especially in terms of portfolios, a lot of people utilize social media as well. You know, how would you say social media plays into that process?
Yeah, well, first let me take a step back though, and sort of follow up on the question about like a demo reel that's ever stood out or anything like that portfolio. One of the things that will always make it stand out is if, you know, I see that the person is solving a problem that I know to be hard in the industry / career. It really shows that they know what's hard and what's not. And if they tackle it and do it well, that is instant interview. Instant interview. For example, we got a portfolio for a candidate, and they had done the character rigging and skin weighting and things like that for an octopus character. And the quick little demo they made with the character looked amazing. It looked a lot like the characters that we had worked on for Penguins of Madagascar. And so instantly I was like, interview them immediately. Don't look at anything else. Stop the movie, interview them, because that character, I know how hard it is. And I want to ask them questions. I don't even want to hear about anything else they've done. I just want to ask them questions about this and see if they really know what they're talking about. And, you know, move forward that way. It was that quick. As soon as I saw the very first thing on the reel, it was like, I don't care. Find them, get them, let's talk to them. As far as social media, absolutely. You know, there are specific sites such as ArtStation, and when looking for modelers and things like that, we will scroll ArtStation. There's also, you know, as far as social media and art goes, I would say Twitter is pretty prevalent. You know, we tend to find style and sort of style examples and artist pages on Twitter. And potentially some of those end up, you know, being able to do splash screens for Fortnite and things like that. But it definitely, social media is definitely a huge part of it. In more animation related and sort of acting related, I think TikTok is the way to go. I've even considered starting to do like little animated clips for TikTok, because the format is perfect. It's you know, the orientation of your device is sort of built in, and it just seems like it's way too easy of a world to get into, to just drop funny little clips and really get your skills up. You know, like speaking to TikTok specifically, if you're doing a monthly minute or monthly 30-second animation to drop in there and you just fill it up, you're going to be improving, and that's practice that you're going to be able to use, even if it doesn't get you a job immediately. But definitely Twitter before other sites. I've also seen, not to, you know, I know we're sort of associated with LinkedIn here, but LinkedIn has had a ton of great artists posting more social media style posts of their work and portfolios and things like that, in a less official way, and more showing like sketches and process and work in progress, and more, you know, LinkedIn is becoming a place where people can feel more vulnerable and less like they have to have everything to the T with their artwork. And I love it. I love seeing LinkedIn do that. And I love seeing the work on there, and have found so many connections that way. And so, yeah, I would definitely spend some time getting into social media and seeing what's there, you know, if I was looking for a job.
Awesome. And Brenna, would you like to add on to any, whether in regards to social media or, you know, or even portfolios or resumes that stood out to you?
Yeah, sure. I think that in my space and in comms, I think the it's pretty simple. You want to be honest. So there's been times in the past where, and this kind of has affected anyone from an intern to, even when I was at Yahoo, one of our CEO was let go because of a discrepancy on his resume. So I think that it's very important to, number one, just be honest about your experiences. That's both on the resume as well as just when you're going through the process, because it's always it can catch up to you. And then when it comes to, comms professionals on social media, it's really important that you should be behind the scenes. I think that, for me, it's more about utilizing it in a smart way to where you can, yes, utilize it to network. If you're reaching out to people on LinkedIn, understanding the difference between LinkedIn and Facebook, and your purpose. So when you're reaching out and you're maybe a cold call, you might, like Stephanie was saying, be specific or, ask a question, not just like a blanket, hey, I'd like to connect. I think that's not going to really help you. I think that if you do have specific questions, and I think LinkedIn has been great about, you can follow certain people and you can see their activity and what they share. And that's important. But yeah, I think that, for me and communications, I think it's more that it's been important for me to stay abreast to what's going on these sites and what's the best way to use them for your purpose of whatever you may be promoting, when you're in your job. Personally, for me, like if you looked at my social media, I tend to draw a very distinct line between my professional persona and my personal one, and that also just helps me in my job and as I mentioned before, the quality of life and being able to set, like, this is who I am in work life, but then I do have a separate, may have a private Instagram, or, I actually don't use a Facebook as I typically did, from a personal standpoint. That's more from a professional standpoint and posting and following. But I think that for Twitter, I agree with Kaye, like Twitter for me is just, from an information gathering standpoint, is very, very important. And it helps me keep up on news across a lot of different industries. And so I think that that's more in the way I use it. And even if I'm interviewing someone and they say, well, this is the first thing I do in the morning when I wake up, I scroll Twitter, I read a couple articles, I get this alert. I think that can be very important for a comms professional to make sure that you're staying up to speed with the news of the day.
Yes, definitely. I love LinkedIn. I love Twitter. Those are probably my two top social media platforms for sure. We're going to take a few questions from the audience right now, and we can go around the table real quick and give us, some of your thoughts. So what avenue would you recommend? This is from Richard. For someone lacking experience in the gaming industry, whether it's, pitching a game or pitching it to a studio, or even just gaining experience to get your foot in the door, how would you go about that? We can go around. Stephanie, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So, I think at the end of the day, it does boil down to just like having some background in, maybe even just a passion project that you had worked on. If it is a game studio that you want to, work with, I know that there can be some, floating around in terms of ambassadorship programs. Apprenticeship is what I mean. Sorry, not ambassador. And just getting the exposure that maybe, if you hadn't had a chance to study any of this type of work, just having the opportunity to apply for programs as such. I know, and shameless plug, there is Grace Ling at EA. She came from a different background, and she decided to build her own Design Buddies environment, and it's grown tremendously through LinkedIn. So it is something that I would say, shout out, check it out if you're interested in just getting your foot in the door with learning more about UX design. But for the most part, yes, it's something that you're gonna certainly need to put yourself out there, try some new things, carve out time in your day to work on, you know, something that you're passionate about. It may take a little bit more, you know, time for you to ramp up and get familiar. But I think just being able to say that you tried and speak to that and add that as, you know, yeah, a passion project on your resume.
I can jump in. I think that when when it comes to gaining that experience, I think that I was just talking about this and your use of LinkedIn, researching, figuring out what is your passion. That takes a lot of work, and sometimes it's hard to do. It's not, and it could change. You may change, what you came into college doing. You thought that was your passion, but then maybe it turns out that you found something else that fits you and suits you better. So I think that when you're still on the fence and you're trying to figure it out, doing your research online, finding people, reading about certain names, and not being afraid to sign up and ask for an informational interview with someone, to just say, like, I'm just trying to figure out what I meant to do. So and asking those questions and getting takes on it. And and ultimately, I think if you have an opportunity, I think you take it, because you have to figure it out, and sometimes there's going to be trial and error. So but if you're trying to build that experience, I think what you do is you build your knowledge first, and that will help you navigate to finding those right opportunities for experiences to get you closer to that step.
Yeah, I'll jump in a little bit too, because I think in the reading the question, if I'm not mistaken, there's also a part of this that you're talking about, sort of strong, organized ideas that you would like to eventually pitch to a studio. If you're talking about a pitch for strong, organized ideas of a game that you've created or that you have in mind, like a game should be like this. I have no experience making a game, but I think it should be like this, and here's my story pitch. There's really not, and I'm going to even talk about the entertainment industry, movies, animation, as well as games. There, in my experience, maybe there is, but in my experience, there is not a studio out there that is going to let you come in and pitch and then sort of mentor you to help make what you pitched. If you have this sort of idea, you're going to have to go on your own and sort of really dig in to understand if it can be made and how, and largely get it made. Whether that be through, finding a mentor who has made a game before, or a film or a cartoon or anything like that, where you have the story idea and the building blocks, and sort of getting help that way, and start really small and sort of get it to a point where it's proving itself, and then you may get a bigger foot in the door, or a way to change career pathing. But just having like a really great idea, any large company, studio, they're going to turn that away immediately, because they definitely do not want to sort of see what you had and then have it be similar to something that they're currently working on and come out. They won't take that in. So if you have an original idea, which is awesome, and you have the sort of building blocks that you are truly passionate about and you believe in, then also be ready to put that passion into the time to make it yourself, or find a crew, find people with experience, hire them if you possibly can, and do it the right way. Just to be clear, if you had an idea that you were going to pitch.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, that's also a really daunting thing, and we see video games everywhere, and we're like, well, I have an idea too, to be able to pitch that. That's awesome advice. So we're going to take one more, because we end at 8. But we have one from Melina who says, what advice would you give in terms of focusing on a specific skill? They study computer games technology with focus on coding, which they love, really passionate about art and creating art assets. She was wondering whether you think putting all the different things I do in different organized sections would be a good idea for a portfolio.
So I'll jump in really quick on that one. So you've got to have focus. Now, and me personally, even in my career pathing for the last 21 years, you're free to move around once you get in, as long as you understand that, you're going to be discovering what you like and don't like about a certain job or a certain place or a certain position and the work and the day-to-day for that sort of creative role. I'm lucky in that I'm one of the sort of odd people who can shift my brain into writing code one day and then making art the next. And so, it took me a while to find roles where that worked out really well, because when I'm shifted to the code side, I really love writing code. It's really fulfilling and it's really great to see it come to life, and it's very instantly gratifying and the feedback is perfect. And then when I shift into art mode, that's more of a process. It's more of a subjective sort of relationship, and it's more emotional, and it's not instant feedback. And I love that process as well. That's where my heart is. And so for me, it was always really hard finding where my heart was in those things. And I knew, if I was doing computer animation during the day, then I was going to do traditional animation at night at home, or fine art at night at home. And so it really was difficult to sort of pick something and stick with it. But that would be my advice. That would really be it. Find where your passion is. Find where your love is. If it is between, let's say, coding and art, then you sort of have to put in double work to get good enough to get hired in either one of those roles. And with the idea that you're going to try it for a while and be like, wow, this really wasn't for me, but it's okay because I've got these skills that I've been maintaining and working with on my own time, and they're also good enough to show that I can pivot. And to really have the option is great. It just, it takes a lot of work, and it's something that you have to decide pretty early, because it takes a long time to get good enough at something to get in the door, in a big way. And so I know that's kind of that answer kind of sucks. It's like, well, hard work and determination, but honestly, that's what it is. And pick your passions and just pour yourself into them, and it'll show through. It really will.
Definitely. Brenna or Stephanie, would y'all like to have some words on that?
Yeah, I just actually wanted to add, I loved what Kaye said. It's just, at the end of the day, it's, doing something to the fullest and finding out that maybe it wasn't exactly what you had hoped for, but you learned along the way. And the thing that you maybe realize is not for you will transcend you to your next opportunity to figure out what you do want to do. So it's never going to be like not worth your time. When I started off in my career, and I'm sure Kaye and Brenna can talk about this too in their own personal journey. But it's like, I've done some things that I really hated, but sometimes those things actually allowed me to have some skill set that lended a hand in other areas. And I can't say enough how much I appreciated those moments of like, wow, I'm really uncomfortable. I really don't enjoy this job, but it's like, it's almost like doing the thing you hate most is actually strengthening you for your next opportunity. So nothing is ever, a waste of time.
Yeah, totally agree. I'll just say that, it builds discipline for sure. I think that that's the one thing that's never going to change as you get older. There's always going to be something that you just don't want to do, but, you have to do it.
Definitely. And this question specifically reminds me of an awesome challenge that we have for everyone watching. It's all about portfolio building. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. And what's really cool about this challenge is when you submit your portfolio with the tool I show you, you'll actually have time for a one-on-one session with our panelists, and also a chance to receive a 1-year membership of Creative Cloud. So pay attention. We're gonna go into it real quick. So let me see. So with it, you might, when operating it for the first time, you might be a little lost. But the challenge is actually right here where it says portfolio. When you click on that, it will take you to a specific web page. Now let me switch that real quick. So this app is Portfolio, Adobe Portfolio. It's an awesome tool to be able to make a portfolio that stands out, and you can show recruiters, and like some of our panelists. Let's see, can y'all see my screen? Okay, something's happening here. All right. So for some reason, I don't know what's happening. Okay. Yes, it does come up, and it shows that I'm sharing my screen on StreamYard. Okay. Well, while we get that figured out, we would like to actually thank our panelists for coming along. I was hoping to get through that. That way we could have a final word. But yes, it is awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry for the technical difficulty on my end. But thank you so much, Stephanie, Brenna, and Kaye. Is there any way, any last words you would like to give in terms of, stuff you'd like to promote or ways to get in contact with you?
I always like to say, just be confident. Like you know your stuff. It's just being able to share it with the world.
Yeah, I'll just add, enjoy this time. I think back, I've been, I graduated from college in 2003, and that's dating me. So I've been doing this for a while, but, and I think back to the excitement of just knowing what's ahead of you, and just enjoy this time to learn and have fun with it.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming out and watching the stream. And if you want to connect, check out my LinkedIn. I think it was shared in the chat a few times. And so feel free to check out what I've done. And I can't wait to see what you've done and what you're doing and what you're going to do. So have a great night, everybody. And thanks again.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
All right, let's see if we can get this one last time to work. Share. Can y'all see that yet? Let's see. I'm gonna try one more last thing. All right. So I'm going to try a different way real quick. There we go. Okay. So for those of y'all that have the Adobe Creative Cloud already, on the left side of your hub, you'll see a tab that says Portfolio. Now that is basically a personalized website that you can utilize to be able to build your own portfolio. And when you're there, for instance, this one's mine right here. It's really cool, and it's part of the Creative Cloud experience. So when we click on unlock, this is one I made. We actually see my little portfolio I put together. On the top, you see a feature. It was a little video Adobe put together about me. I love for people to see that whenever I'm applying for places. Below that, we have some different categories, and I actually utilize these as tabs. So here you can go in there, and there's my graphic design portfolio, my photography portfolio, and my various filmmaking projects that I would love to share with recruiters. So for instance, right there is actually my graphic design portfolio. What's cool about this is that it's super easy to be able to add a module and then a photo grid and then start putting your assets in there. On top of that, in the settings of the portfolio app, you can also customize your URL to be specific to you. So for instance, when you hit on my logo again, it actually takes you back to my home page. And then you can go explore further. It's super simple. I'm not an expert in UI or UX design, but I was able to put it together. What's really cool is once you set it to go live, the URL is whatever you want it to be, .myportfolio.com. And you can attach that to your resume, to your LinkedIn, to your Instagram bio, and it's all super easy to do. So yes, I challenge you, Adobe challenges you to be able to make a portfolio with Adobe Portfolio, put it in the Discord, and 3 finalists will be selected to be able to have some one-on-one time with one of our panelists and also a chance to win the Creative Cloud for a year. So make sure to submit that. I'm really looking forward to seeing them. And thank you so much for joining tonight.